Okay. Um, I'm a little irritated right now. My neighbor is blasting his music. He's a youngin, like you guys. And he likes his music, and that's fine, but his bass is rattling my entire wall, so I'm a little irked, and I could be confrontational and, say something, but why would I do that? So I'm just going to endure it and whine about it, as we all love to do, us introverted, passive individuals. Okay, so this week, the silver lining to all this nonsense is I love this topic. It's one of my favorite topics to talk about. I could teach a whole class just on this topic today. But the good news for you is I couldn't I couldn't justify turning this into two lectures. So this is going to be the first module in which there's just one video for you to watch. So I think from here on out, there's just going to be a single video for each module. There's just so much with geosphere, hydrosphere, and atmosphere. There's no way to really condense those into one video without it being a 3 hour long video. And I just thought it was easier to put two videos up so you guys could like watch them. An hour long video is about an hour long lecture, right? So I thought it would be easier for you guys to do two videos instead of one. But this time you're only going to need one. We're going to talk biosphere. So now we're talking about sort of the biological elements of this Earth. But because this is a geology class, and because I'm a geologist, we're going to focus in on the geologic history of Earth and how that pertains to living entities today. Where did we come from? How did we get here? What is the fossil record and what does that entail? And I'm missing something. We'll get to it. It's fine. If hopefully this is not a 3 hour long video with me just getting irked every 5 minutes that my neighbor is shaking the backside of my wall. It's fine. So this is your homework this week. We're gonna come back to this. But this is your homework this week. And essentially what this assignment is, and I love this assignment, it's one of my favorites, is you're condensing the entirety of geologic history, all 4.6 billion years of the Earth's history, into a calendar year, right? Because wrapping your brain around 4.6 billion years of Earth's time is it's like impossible. Like you can't do it. It's so much time. We as humans can't think about that at a reasonable scale. So we're gonna condense it into a calendar year, so you can see exactly um sort of the scale at which these events occurred. I'll come back to this. We're going to circle back. Your lab this week's going to be really fun too. You're going to do some relative dating, which we're going to talk about. And then you're going to look at fossils, which are fun. In my Geology 101 class, they have real fossils for my students to look at. It's kind of a bummer that this is not in person because real fossils are funner. So this is the geologic time. This is the most recently published GSA, Geological Society of America, version of geologic time. And what we're looking at here are four eras. The Cenozoic, which is our modern era, the Mesozoic, Paleozoic, and Precambrian. What I will say is this is not to scale. And in fact, oh my God, with your homework, each one of these colors, I'm so sorry if you're colorblind. So from January until mid-November is the Precambrian, which is just this column, like condensing this into a calendar year. That's how much time the Precambrian took up. And the reason we condense them into these eras is we sort of classify important fossil assemblages or important historical events that are geologically related, right? We classify these into these eras. So Precambrian, there was life, briefly, but the abundance of life didn't begin to occur until the Paleozoic. Oh my God, and now there's small children outside. Hold on. I might actually go crazy. It's fine. Tomorrow's Friday. I'm filming this on Thursday. Tomorrow's Friday. It's gonna be a good day. Get to go camping this weekend. Okay. So continuing on, we start to see really important historic events in the fossil record within each era. And in fact, we simplify it even further into these ages, into these epochs, into these periods. And it all has to do with the fossils that we are finding in these times that are determining when our plants um, occurring. When do we start to see reptilians and dinosaurs, which actually start pretty early on. Carboniferous was abundant with plants. And then when do we see humans? That's going to be the Holocene epoch, Quaternary period. So that is sort of how we derive the history of geology. When you hear somebody say, "Oh, that's from the Permian period," we tend to use periods, um, and then in some capacities, we'll talk, "Oh, late Carboniferous." Maybe you'll hear Pennsylvanian, Mississippian, but honestly, we're probably going to say Carboniferous. When we date things, when we talk about things, when you're looking at fossils this week, you're going to ID them based on, oh, it's from the Ordovician period, come here, or it's from the Cambrian, or it's from the Permian period. So these are great. The ages are really interesting, and they were derived from other really important fossil assemblages within the Carboniferous, within the Devonian. But as a principal rule, unless you're really into a specific period and you're like studying that period intricately, you're really just going to talk about the period, the Cretaceous, the Jurassic, Triassic, etc. So we date. Let me move my face. We date rocks. We date the Earth's history, um, a couple different ways. Okay, I wasn't sure where we were going with this. Um, And one of the ways we date it is through relative dating. We do this with sedimentary rocks primarily, only. I say primarily only to say only because sedimentary rocks are deposited with the law of original horizontality. We talked about this, right? Um, Sedimentary rocks are deposited over time in a horizontal way. And remember, if you even if I don't remember if I talked about this. I feel like I did briefly. But just logically too, the older sediments are going to be at the bottom, right? And then you have a new environment that forms, and that's going to deposit another material on top, and then another environment forms, and it's going to form another environment. Um, so what we're seeing is the oldest materials at the bottom, and then a different layer is going to be younger. Different layer is going to be younger. So 1 is our oldest layer here, and 10 is our youngest. Now, this isn't giving us specific dates, right? Like I'm not saying, oh, layer 1 is 10 million years old. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is layer 1 is going to be the oldest. Come on. And then layer 10 is going to be the youngest. This is relative dating. So we layer the stratigraphy, and then within that stratigraphy, we also find fossils. And fossils are going to be predominantly in sedimentary rocks. This is not always true, and I'll talk about why in several slides from now. But 90% of the time, we find fossils in sedimentary rocks. And they're particularly preserved really well in marine sediments, so shales, mudstones, sandstones, sometimes. And they can be preserved in other environments as well, but marine fossils are particularly preserved well. And fossils also help us show the date, the age, relative age of stratigraphy. So by identifying the presence of specific fossils in a particular sequence of rock strata, geologists can determine which layers are older or younger relative to each other. They can also tell oldest to youngest fossils, right? And oldest to youngest organisms. Oh, so the idea that the oldest rocks are on the bottom and that the newer ones are on top. This is a law. This is a one of Steno's laws called superposition. The idea that the older rocks are always below newer rocks. Oh, Emily, pull your life together. Older rocks are always below newer rocks. Always, always, always. I know the sentence doesn't make sense, but just think about it logically too. The oldest environment is going to have to be at the bottom, and then other environments are going to build on top of that. So I fucked that up. I'll try to change it if I remember. Biostratigraphy is the study of the vertical distribution of fossils in rock layers that rely heavily on index fossils. This approach helps create a biostratigraphic column, allowing scientists to divide Earth's history into distinct zones based on the types of fossils present. I just need to know. Okay. I wasn't sure if I had this slide. So, one of my favorite analogies. Let's talk index fossils because I keep bringing this word up, and I'm sure. How do I make this bigger? And I'm sure you're like, what the heck is an index fossil? Oh, I'm so glad you asked. So we have these fossils, right, within different stratigraphy. And I liked this picture in particular because what we see is the oldest layer has these trilobites. These are trilobites. And then it's also in the layer above it. But with this layer is another organism that look like eyelashes. I actually don't even know what these are supposed to be. Um, these eyelash organisms sort of coincide in the same stratigraphy as these trilobites, but not in this stratigraphy, right? But then the eyelashes are in layer three with these, I don't know what these are, bivalves of some kind. Um, so these guys, these little bivalves, are in quite a few layers of stratigraphy, right? So trilobites are in two. And then these bivalves here, these orange bivalves, fossil C, are in one, two, three, four layers of stratigraphy. So they were in four different environments that were deposited on top of each other. And then you can look at the other fossils as well. We've got ammonites. Actually, ammonite's the best one. So ammonites here are only in one layer of stratigraphy. And then we have more of these bivalve things, and then we have these shell thingies. Clearly, I'm a shell expert, as we can tell. And then we have more different kinds of bivalves. These look like clam shells up here. And what I'm getting at is, if you were to look at stratigraphy across the globe, and you were to find a spot in America, and America had this layer of sediment that had these creepy looking bivalves. And you're like, that's interesting. I found these bivalves, but the same species was found in Peru. Maybe not Peru, that's a bad one. Norway. The same species was found in Norway in these five layers of stratigraphy. Okay, well, that's great, but we don't know which of these five layers of stratigraphy that could match that one over in the United States. But if I were to find an ammonite in that stratigraphy and I found ammonites in this stratigraphy in Norway, I could say, okay, so we have these creepy bivalve thingies in the US, but they're in five layers of stratigraphy over in Norway, but we have ammonites there too. It has to be this single unit of stratigraphy. That is the one that we're looking at in the United States. This is an index fossil. Index fossils are widespread geographically. They can be found anywhere, which ammonites are. And trilobites are also considered index fossils. Um, so they're widespread geographically. You can find them in different places across the globe. And they're confined to a very short period of time. So my other favorite analogy, which I thought I had a slide of here, and I don't, are, in millions of years, if a scientist is digging through some dirt and they find a Lego, they're going to be like, well, shit, this could be from 19, oh gosh, no, they actually started in 1920s, I think was like when Lego started. So Legos began manufacturing in 1920s. And they're going to continue for a long time. Everybody loves Legos. Who hates Legos? Nobody. So you have this layer of Legos and you're like, God, I can't find a timeline in which these Legos could have been. It could have been anywhere from 1920 to 2600, right? When humans killed themselves off. But this scientist is digging through dirt and they find a fidget spinner. They're going to be like, this is from the Great Fidget Spinner Explosion of 2017. And they're going to know that that layer of material was from 2017. The fidget spinner would be an index fossil. Legos would make very, very poor index fossils. So we use fossils as a sort of indicator for age without necessarily having to radiocarbon date them. We can radiocarbon date a lot of them, which gives us precise dates, which I think we talk about here in this slideshow. But this is just the sense of relative dating, looking at a sequence of rock and fossil and identifying where they are in the stratigraphy and about how old they could be. Rough estimate. So this is your homework this week, part of your homework this week, or I guess your lab, pardon me. And we're looking at how different layers of rock interact with each other as a part of relative dating. So the law of superposition, older rocks, see, I said it here. I don't know why I fucked it up in the last sentence. Older rocks are below newer rocks. Essentially what you're doing with this block in your lab this week is you are labeling this block from oldest to youngest, or youngest to oldest, whichever way you want to go. I don't really care. Oldest to youngest based on these laws. So which one comes first, right? You're going to be like, oh, I came first. And then you're going to follow the sequence up. But you also have to consider other laws, like the law of cross-cutting relationships. This C and H are igneous dikes. And an igneous dike can cut through stratigraphy, uh, and they're going to be younger than the stratigraphy that they cut through. So what this is saying is that layer K and E had to be deposited before C cut through it. So C is going to be younger than all of these units, most likely. Not most likely, it is. I'm trying to be vague for your homework, but you'll get the gist. The law of original horizontality, layers have to be deposited in a horizontal way before tilting or folding, can't do that with my hands, occurs. So layers are deposited horizontally, and then over time, based on tectonic processes, you might get some squishing that makes layers fold or tilt. And then unconformity. And one of you, whoever had the Grand Canyon National Park, I asked you to describe what the Great Unconformity was within the Grand Canyon. That was one of your questions. And the Great Unconformity is so fucking cool, you guys. It's an unconformity is essentially missing time. And the Great Unconformity in the Grand Canyon has like 2.6 million years of missing time. And what that means is you have something, this line here, line M, I have to make sure this is not the block that is in your lab, represents an unconformity because we have this layered material that was then tilted over time. But based on the law of original horizontality, something happened here that eroded away the top levels of this material. And then over time, more material was overlain on this erosion. And between F and L, what we're seeing is an unconformity. We have missing time from where this tilted, eroded away, and then L was deposited on top of F. That is an unconformity. And they're really fucking cool because you don't know how much time you have missing. It could be thousands of years, it could be millions, it could be billions of years. But you have missing time in that geologic sense, which is so cool. Okay, so those are fossils. That is relative dating. We're going to dive into, can we unequivocally identify Earth's earliest forms of life? So this is a cross section of a stromatolite, which, as of now, researchers have discovered are the earliest forms of life on Earth. I'm going to say the stupidest number, so let me just pause here. Okay, yeah, I almost said something stupid, so I'm glad that I looked it up. The oldest known stromatolite is 3.5 billion years old. I almost said 2 billion, and I was like, that doesn't feel right. It is 3.5 billion years old. And what it is it's kind of gross, actually. These still exist. There's a whole bed of stromatolites in Australia. I think it's on the east side. No, it's on the south side somewhere. There's this huge field of stromatolites, and they're old. And what they are is they're this like microbial mat of like mucus. It's gross, but they're microbes. They're single-celled organisms that form these mucus-based mats, and they form them over time in this like, is it on the next slide? No, I don't have the next slide. In this like mound. It's like the size of a football. They don't get very big. But these were the first, and they're formed out of what we call cyanobacteria. Cyanobacteria. And this organism was the first known living organism that we know of yet, and this might change as we research more into it, but as of now, this is the oldest known living organism, cyanobacteria, that produced oxygen. So this is a big deal because these guys are one of the reasons that we now breathe. And this is a very fossilized stromatolite. They're gooey and sticky and they look really fucking gross. But they are how we breathe, so we can't be too mad at them. I mean, now that it's fossilized and cut open, it's very beautiful. Mucus, gross. So we look for life in fossils. That's how we know how life exists. And there are a lot of problems with this process, right? Because fossils are predominantly deposited and left behind from hard-bodied organisms. We do have soft fossils in our fossil record. We have leaves. The chuckanets, for instance, have a lot of palm fossils, which are left over by, it's a carbon fossil of a leaf. So we have them, but they're very rare compared to the hard body fossils that we find in abundance. So our idea of what has existed in the past is uh, very limited, right? So we have bone fossils. This is of a, oh, I didn't label it. Okay, that's cool. I don't know what it is. It's clearly an animal. This is a trilobite. This is a bivalve. Um, and these guys were in the Cambrian period, so around 541 million years ago. That's when we begin to start to see an abundance of fossils. So the problem too is we might not know how early um, organisms were first introduced if they didn't fossilize well. I know, like blow your mind a little bit, right? So we might have organisms that existed significantly before this 3.5 billion years ago, when this stromatolite was first fossilized, but we don't have that evidence, and we may never have that evidence. Microorganisms. So these are the uh, unicellular bacteria, the cyanobacteria that we found in these guys, stromatolites. There is a hypothesis sort of diving around. This was 2014. This was a paper in 2014 that the idea of life existing at mid-ocean ridges. Something we're finding. Oh, hold on. I've got this great book that is really fascinating, um, and I highly recommend it. It is called here. The Extreme Life of the Sea. I got it because the cover was really pretty, but it's actually a really fascinating book. It's Stephen Palumbi and Anthony Palumbi, father son, I think. Um, and this is a big seller at the Monterey Bay Aquarium. Um, and it's really fascinating because it talks about how, humans for so long didn't think that life could exist without oxygen, without the very components that humans need to survive. And what we're finding is that there are hundreds, if not millions, of organisms that can survive in environments that humans definitely couldn't. One of those environments is our mid-ocean ridges. I'm sorry, I'm getting so excited that I can't even talk. So there are like heat tolerant bacteria and okay, talk about it a little bit. And there are organisms that can't photosynthesize with the sun, right? So photosynthesis is the primary factor that um, plants need to thrive, to survive, right? So photosynthesis is the idea that they take in carbon dioxide and sun, and then they produce oxygen and energy and sugars so that they can grow. And that's really beneficial for us. So also this idea that organisms could live somewhere dark, like a mid-ocean ridge, there's no light down here, was like nonsensical. But then recently, in recent years, we've discovered that there is this process called chemosynthesis, which is the same thing as photosynthesis, but instead of using light to synthesize sugars, it uses chemicals from the heat of these mid-ocean ridges and from what we call black smokers or hydrothermal vents under the ocean water. And organisms are thriving near these mid-ocean ridges, near these hydrothermal vents under the ocean. So there's this hypothesis that mid-ocean ridges could provide chemical and temperature gradients for Earth's earliest organisms to harness. We don't have enough evidence to suggest that, but this was a hypothesis that was brought up. We will see how this goes, and we'll see if there's evidence that can help prove this. So this is for whoever had Yellowstone. I'm sorry, I wish I should have like written your names down with the national. I mean, I did, but like in front of me here. Somebody had Yellowstone, and this is an acid pond at Yellowstone. It is another example of how organisms are thriving in environments that humans would never expect living organisms to thrive in. This orange goop, this is bacteria. This is an organism that is thriving off of this acidic pond. And if you don't know, this acidic pond is so acidic that it will strip your skin off your bones within minutes. And if you want to get really morbid and go down the morbid rabbit hole, there are stories of people that have done this. Don't recommend. One of them was like their dog jumped into the acid pond and they jumped in after the dog, and of course neither survived. And the bones don't even survive because this pool is so acidic, nothing is left behind. So the idea that an organism could thrive in an environment where humans literally die within minutes is crazy, but it's also so fucking cool. And this is so cool for astrobiology and the idea of life on other planets. We're sort of starting to come to this conclusion like, oh, there are environments that, yeah, humans can't survive in, but there might be microorganisms and biological entities that can survive in these environments. And it's so cool. It's so fascinating. They're looking at, oh God, I can't say some of the names. Some of the moons of Jupiter and some of the moons of Saturn um, might have environments in which life could be sustained right now, which is so cool. Oh, pillow lavas. Yeah, I was like, why is this important? Because of pillow lavas. Oh, sorry. Ad. I apologize. Skip that ad. So this is a pillow lava. Pillow basalt. So if you remember when we talked about mid-ocean ridges, basalts form at the bottom of the ocean. They're part of they make up the oceanic crust. This is what it looks like when that basalt is being formed under the water. So it's still really fucking hot. But as soon as it touches that water, it cools and it forms these really balloony, basalty, bubbly formations that are, I mean, imagine this water right next to it. It's so fucking hot. Humans can't thrive here. And the fact that there, I mean, this molten lava is filled with so many chemicals. It's actually producing a lot of sulfur dioxide and a lot of other really, really dangerous and toxic materials. But these organisms love it. They are living their best life. So yeah, I say there's no light under the ocean. Of course, you have these pillow basalts that might be producing a little bit of light, but overall. Okay. So the reason we talked pillow basalts is because these are in Australia. Ooh, or are they in Canada? Ooh, if they're in Canada or Australia, I don't remember. Both of those places actually have the oldest rocks. Canada has the oldest rock in the form of gneiss, a metamorphic rock, if you recall. And then Australia has the oldest mineral in sedimentary rock form, a zircon, in Jack Hills, which is Western Australia. And it's both rocks. So the gneiss and the zircons are 4.3 billion years old. So I want to go to both places. They're both literally out in the middle of nowhere. So that's great. So we found these greenstone belts. So greenstone is a metamorphic rock, but its parent rock is basalt. And we're noticing that this metamorphosed basalt was pillow basalt, which means that it was deposited, it was formed, not deposited, pardon me, it was formed at the bottom of the ocean. And what we found were fossils within these pillow basalts. So these fossils are uh, tube fossils. That's not the right word. They're cast fossils. Oh my God, I don't know why I couldn't think of that. So they're cast fossils. And what that means is that there was a worm, a microorganism. These are tiny. You've got 100 micrometers here, 100 micrometers here. Like this was tiny. They needed a really intense microscope to see this. But what they found was these like worm bacteria thingies built this tube. It's a tube. And the only way it could have formed was this microorganism burrowing its way into this rock to extract nutrients. And they're finding these tubes within these pillow basalts that were once mid-ocean ridges. So that's where we're getting back to. So we have mid-ocean ridges, we have life within mid-ocean ridges, and we're finding fossils in igneous rocks. So remember how I said 90% of our fossils are found in sedimentary rocks. I hold that to be true. However, this is an instance in which we are finding fossils, and they're cast fossils within igneous rocks, which is really cool. That's almost unheard of. So this is our evidence that suggests that we might have life outside of the basalt. Oh, there's my, oh, I did have my stromatolites on here. The thing to note is because it's a cast model, which means that these organisms burrowed their way into this igneous rock. We might not know exactly how old it is. This guy was dated at 3.486 billion years old. Sorry, yeah, so 3 billion years old, but 3,486 million years old. But 3.5, if we round up, billion years old. But some of the problems that we have are the rock is dated at 3.5. Oh, the rock is dated at 3.5 billion years old. I gotta double check that date. Something's off about that date because our oldest rocks are only 3 point. Oh no, sorry. Our oldest rocks are 4.3. They're older. My brain is mush, you guys. Okay, 3.5 billion years old. This tracks. This makes me feel better. Sorry, I had a brain toot there. Okay, so what we're finding is this rock was 3.5 billion years old, but that's not necessarily true that the organism was 3.5 billion years old. So it's a mold. Oh, that's the word I was trying to come up with. Cast, mold. They're the same thing. So this is our evidence of organisms in igneous rocks and some of the oldest organisms that we've been able to find. All right, here are our living stromatolites right now. And these are also 3.5 billion years old. Layered deposit mainly of limestone formed by one-celled organisms, cyanobacteria. And these were the very first photosynthesizing organisms. So these are our modern stromatolites in Australia. See, they look kind of weird, right? They look kind of gross. But they're cool. They're producing lots of oxygen for us. But imagine that these were like the only things everywhere on Earth for a long time, and they were producing oxygen. This is what a big one looks like. So they form these micro. Oh, here it is. Here it is. Look how gross that is. That's mucus. Like, no, thank you. But also important. So it's algae, cyanobacteria, and it's mucusy, textured and gross. And this is how they fossilize. They form layers over each other as they get bigger and bigger and bigger. So where am I going with this? How did Earth's earliest life change the oceans and atmosphere? So we first have evidence of oxygen and cyanobacteria about 3.5 billion years ago. This is how it started. This is just a process of photosynthesis, respiration, which I talked about. Sunlight is going to provide energy for photosynthesis. Plants take in carbon dioxide, water, and energy, and they create sugar and biomass, but they also produce oxygen. And we have the first known concentration of oxygen also preserved in our geologic record. And I have a sample of this, and it's at school. I don't have it here. But what we have are called BIFs. They're banded ion formations formed in the ocean. So these are actually technically sedimentary rocks. And they form as oxygen was being produced by these cyanobacteria, these stromatolites. So when oxygen first combined with these sediments, if there was any iron in these sediments, this iron would oxidize. Remember, we talked about oxidization as a form of chemical weathering. Well, you need oxygen to oxidize something, particularly iron. And if there's any iron in these sediments and it came in contact with oxygen, it would turn red. We know that these bands of red here were when oxygen was present on Earth's surface and eventually dissolved into the ocean. So oxygen gets dissolved into the ocean regularly. This was an ocean-based rock, and when it came in contact with the oxygen, it would turn red. Well, when we had periods of time in which there wasn't any oxygen, and so imagine the stromatolites are alive and they're photosynthesizing, and then they die. And then they come back and then they die. We see this cyclical period of time in which we have oxygen in the atmosphere and then no oxygen. And then oxygen and then no oxygen. And then oxygen and then no oxygen. These guys can be really old. We have cyanobacteria as far back as 3.5 billion years old, but we have the first record of oxygen about 2.7 billion years old. And they can also tell us that there was a cyclic variation in oxygen production with periods where no oxygen was present, or not enough to oxidize. So I don't know why. I don't know if all of a sudden the stromatolites were like, we're gonna go extinct, and then we're gonna come back, and then we're gonna go extinct. I am not enough of a biologist to confidently say why that happened, but we do know that there were cycles of oxygen within Earth's history, until we get to the Great Oxygenation Event. Um, so the formation of supercontinents, move my face, is linked to the increase in atmospheric oxygen. And this has to do with the fact that we needed enhanced sedimentation during the supercontinent, so Pangea. I don't know that this is Pangea, but Pangea is one of the big supercontinents, or multiple throughout Earth's history. Promoted the burial of a high fraction of organic carbon, which is just dead biomass. So that's going to be dead plants, dead trees. We see a lot of organic carbon in shales. We see a lot of organic carbon in some mudstones, primarily shales. Coal is a biomass. We don't see coal quite yet in early this history, but we'll get there eventually. Thus preventing reaction with free oxygen, leading to a sustained increase in atmospheric oxygen. Okay, sorry, I had to double read this to make sure that I'm not going to lie to you. So what this is saying is reaction with free oxygen within, so the organic carbon was being buried, and it's preventing a reaction with free oxygen within the atmosphere, which means that all of that atmospheric oxygen is left behind. And that is how we have a lot of oxygen abundance. This is a burial of organic carbon. This was my master's. I think I just threw this in here because I was so excited about my master's when I did this class last year. And it was a cool project. I'm just going to skip it though. Okay. Maybe I'll come back to it eventually. I have PTSD from that whole process, so I don't need to dwell on it. So this is the Great Oxygenation Event. So this happened when there was so much oxygen in Earth's atmosphere. And we think this happened between 2.5 and 2.3 billion years ago. So here's us. 2.5, 2.3 billion years ago. We also know there was a glaciation at this time. 3.5 billion. I'm sorry, I'm so tired. 3.5 billion years ago is when we first see cyanobacteria. First life, which, wait, I have a lot of questions about that too. Ignore that. We're going to just start at 3.5 billion years ago, where the first oxygen-producing bacteria appear. We have this, and here's the great oxidization. Oh my God, oxidization event. I need a nap, you guys. So there's so much oxygen in the air. And this oxygen was in the form of a diatomic element, oxygen, which just means that it bonds with itself. And this is vital for animals, modern animals, to exist. But you'll note, this is oh boy, this is not to scale. We do not have the same amount of oxygen in our atmosphere today as we did during the Great Oxidization Event. So this is a really bad graph. I'm not going to redo it, but the gist is most of our oxygen, oh my God, existed in the atmosphere around this time, 2.5 to 2.3 billion years ago. I do agree with that number. The amount of oxygen in today's atmosphere is not nearly as substantial as it is 2.5 billion years ago, though. So this oxygenation event led to the Cambrian explosion of life. So as soon as there was all this oxygen in the atmosphere, animals were able to thrive. And we did, and there was an explosion of animals. So nearly all the creatures that evolved during the Ediacaran period, I don't know how to say that, were soft-bodied. But that changed, which is why we don't have a whole lot of them in our fossil record. That changed at the dawn of the Cambrian period when organisms left a conspicuous fossil record because many possessed skeletons made of hard, durable minerals like carbonate, which is like seashells today. Seashells are made out of calcium carbonate. And apatite, which is a really cool, that's another really cool mineral. The Cambrian is divided into 3 intervals, each characterized by distinctive animal life in the sea. We have the lowermost Cambrian. You can see this is another mold fossil where we think an animal is burrowing. The Timoshean fauna, this is clearly not a fossil, and that's the ugliest thing I've ever seen. And then we have large animals with skeletons. This is a trilobite. Oh my God, my cat is snoring right now. I'm so glad she can sleep through the nonsense. So paleontologists have noted that many animals many animal groups evolved skeletons within the Cambrian period. So this is where we begin to see that abundance of fossils because they have these hard parts that were able to be fossilized. But there are reasons for creatures to make a skeleton. Oh, I don't answer it. But essentially, I mean, imagine you're evolving over time and you need protection from predators, or you need to move better. Actually, hard parts, including skeletons, allow for better movement and mobility. And they're also a protective device. So the idea that animals and organisms were able to start evolving these hard parts is a really important part of evolutionary history. The Burgess Shale, which is my dream. I want to go here so bad. We don't live that far from it. I say that. I think it's still like a 13-hour drive or something from Bellingham. It's in BC, and it's the most biodiverse rock formation that we have been able to find in the world. I don't know how many. Okay, it doesn't say. I don't know how many types of fossils we have found, but we have found the most biodiverse amount of fossils within this shale. And it's Cambrian. It's a really old rock, about 500 million years old. And you can find, I don't even know if they let you get to it because it's like scientists are obsessed with it. But essentially, we see soft body parts and hard body parts within this. Hold on. I'm going to do it just because I can. Okay, so this is what it actually looks like. It's kind of red. It's been oxygenized. Oh my God. Just fire me already until I can fucking talk. But it's a shale. And if you remember, shale is a really, really fine-grained sedimentary rock. That's the kind of rock that you're going to find at the bottom of the ocean. These are all primarily marine fossils that you find. And it's huge. I mean, it's massive. And then in terms of where it's at, so here's where we are. It's just right here. Ugh, I want to go so bad. Look how cool it would be. But I mean, it's like, oh, you really got to dive in there to get to it. And if I remember correctly, you have to like go through a process to be able to get there. And I don't know if you can hike there, I guess. I don't know. Look at that. It's so cool. So I want to go. It's my dream. Someday I'll get there. I'll like magical adventure myself there at some point, but we're not that far from it. So anyways, it's one of the most biodiverse rocks on the planet. I mean, Canada has some of the coolest rocks on the planet. So moving along. Sorry, I know I get really excited. There are six main types of fossils. We have preserved remains, which you can see is this little mosquito that has been preserved in amber. This is actually a thing. I know Jurassic Park has like romanticized the idea that we can extract blood from mosquitoes and amber. But the idea is we do actually have a good amount of full organisms, soft and hard-parted organisms that have been preserved in amber, which is just like tree sap. So this is a really cool kind of fossil. We have trace fossils, so imagine a footprint. And actually, some of the coolest hominid fossils are a set of footprints that were found in Africa, and I don't remember how old they are. As a geologist, I'm like 4.5 billion years. No, they're only like a couple, like tens of thousands years old. So I'm like, ugh, they're so young. But we found footprints of a bipedal adult walking next to a bipedal child. You can look that up. It's really interesting, but that is a trace fossil. And it's so cool to me too. I don't know how this works. I mean, that's a lie. I do. In the sense that if, these footprints happened and then they were left there for tens of thousands of years without any disturbance. And it has to be a super arid environment in which that happens. There can be no other kinds of disturbances. Something is going to have to deposit on top of that to preserve it. It's so interesting to me. A cast fossil. So a mold fossil, these are sort of converse fossil types. We see a lot of mold fossils. This is an ammonite fossil. But we see a lot of cast fossils that are like pre-mineralized rocks or hard part within a rock. So I don't trilobite might not be the best option, but like if you ever go to a beach, I say a beach, you can go a lot of places and find shell fossils, right? And you can find these shell fossils and they're full shell fossils. We call them articulated shells, which means they're still intact. They're still like together. and they're inside a rock, and you can crack that rock open. And when you pull it out, you have the cast that is that shell. And then you have on the other side the mold that shell left behind. So cast and mold fossils, petrified fossils. So this is from the Petrified Forest National Park. This forms in the same way that like geodes form, coprolites form. I have a coprolite, which is fossilized poop, but it's not real poop. So the student who did Petrified Forest, forgive me, I'm sorry, I should know your name, did a really great job of describing how premineralization works and how you form these petrified fossils. And essentially what happens is, especially with wood, and this happens with poop too, which is why coprolites exist. Coprolites, so I guess I'll talk about the process of coprolites. Coprolites have to form from animals that are that bury their dung, right? So they bury their dung, and that dung forms a mold in the shape of this poop. And over time, the poop disintegrates, but it's sort of taken in place by aqueous solution that has a lot of ions in it. It's rich in ions like silica. And it trickles through this mold that is poop. And then over time, it just forms a rock. So it's essentially a petrified fossil is a rock in the shape of something that left behind a mold. That's it. It's a really cool process though. And then you have carbon film, which we see a lot of in the chuck nuts. These are our leaves. These are our soft-bodied fossils. We have a lot of leaf fossils that have left behind carbon film. And what happens is these leaves might fall and then they get buried really quickly. And they leave behind a carbon residue in the rock that it eventually turns into, the sedimentary rock that it turns into. Oh, okay. I was like, I don't know how much more I'm going to go on. So this is actually a really great depiction of the different fossils that we find within the geologic timescale. Archean fossils. See, this is our first organism. I don't know what this chart was trying to depict. We don't necessarily have first life that appears 4.4 billion years ago. This one, it appears at 3.5 billion years ago, which tracks. This is from my understanding. So we have our first life forms here, and then in the Proterozoic, we start to see more multicellular organisms and corals and algae, first shells. Cambrian is when we really start to see some really cool organisms and like interesting animals. The Ordovician and Silurian, Devonian, Carboniferous is when we really start to see an abundance of plants. I don't remember if I talked about this in geology. I talked about it in one of my classes, but all of the coal that we have on the planet and a lot of our oil as well, if I'm not mistaken. Coal for sure. I'm going to have to double check that oil reference. But coal for sure is from the Carboniferous period. So the Carboniferous period was this explosion of time in which we didn't have any ice on either pole. And so plants were everywhere. Trees were everywhere. And they died, obviously, throughout the glaciations and a change of environment. And they were buried so fast that it left behind all of this coal in a bunch of different areas. So Bellingham is a coal mining town, and that has to do with the fact that 55 million years ago, and before that, we've had tropical environments that grow a lot of these plant life. So anyways, this is where most of our coal comes from. It's carbon. That's all coal is. Then we start to get into some dinos, more dinos, and then the dinosaurs die. And they leave behind mammals. So actually, this is when the dinos die, 66 million years ago. And this is when we have mammals take over, and then humans. Humans didn't show up for a while. So your task for the homework this week is to condense geologic time into a calendar year, and I'll show you how to do that here in a second. We've had 5 mass extinctions. Oh, there's another really great book. Hold please, hold please, hold please. I think it's right here. It won the Pulitzer. This is called The Sixth Extinction. And it's how humans are killing themselves. So it's kind of depressing, but it's such a good read. And it talks about the first 5 extinctions. Oh, the other really good book that I have, I love that my bookshelf's just right here, is End Times. This one's also really horrifying to read. I read it a couple years ago. I don't know that I'll ever read it again. Because it talks about how the earth is going to, how we're going to die, how we're going to end up in a sixth extinction, right? And one of the things that they talk about is this is man-made and natural events that could wipe out all of history, all of humans. And this is just how we're currently doing it through climate change. But what was terrifying about it was there was a whole chapter on nuclear war, and he talked about the Cold War, and I learned things about the Cold War that I never wanted to know, and now I can never unlearn them. So, excellent books regarding extinctions. We have 5 known mass extinctions in Earth's history. The most recent one was the dinosaur extinction, was 66 million years ago. We know we're 90%, 99% sure it was an asteroid impact. We have a lot of evidence that points in that direction. And this is how the dinos died. 75% of the Earth's population of any species died. But there are some scarier ones. The Permian extinction, which we don't actually know 100% how it happened, killed over 95% of the Earth's species, which is crazy to me. We did have a drop in oxygen levels about 375 million years ago. And then we had a super intense ice age about 445 million years ago that probably killed a bunch of organisms. But these two were like, we don't really know how these ones happened for sure. Anyways, we have ideas, obviously, but like we don't really know. And what I find really like, I don't know, relieving about this idea is that 95% of all of the species of Earth were killed out, went extinct 250 million years ago. And like, look how cool we are now. We're back, we're thriving. Look at all the amazing species that exist now. When we kill ourselves off inevitably, I don't know, in like 1,000 years, we'll come back. Maybe not us, but the Earth will come back. Species will come back. Something will happen. Some other species will thrive. That gives me a little bit of morbid hope, I guess. Oh, okay, that's it, I guess. So, what I want you guys to do, hold on, I did get these out. Your homework this week is this. I should make a separate video, but I'm probably going to re-record this video next year because this was a mess, and I apologize. It's been a long week. So your task for your homework this week, what is to condense geologic time into a calendar year. And the way you're going to do this, I might have to reformat this, is you're going to pick 2, and I mean, this is all in the instructions, so read the instructions, but you're going to pick 2 events from each era. So this is the Cenozoic, this is our most recent one. Precambrian's our oldest. You're going to pick 2 from each era, and you're going to math out when these events would have happened. And you're going to do that using a ratio. And the ratio is this. It's the easiest ratio. If you're struggling with math, I understand. It is a simple cross-canceling problem. And you're only doing days. I used to have my students do this with minutes too, but I was like, that's excessive. You're just going to do days. So you're going to leave the denominators of both of these fractions alone. They're going to stay the same every time because you're going to solve for x over 365 days of a year. And you're going to compare it to the 4.6 billion years that Earth has been around. So the number that you're going to change is the 66 million years. And so the example they're using is the death of the dinosaurs, this one here, the extinction of dinosaurs. You're going to multiply 365 by 66 million, or whatever day you're doing, whatever event you're doing. And then you're going to divide that number by 4.6 billion years. You can do that on your phone. If you do it on your phone, I mean, last I saw, you had to turn it on its side so that it could get to billion. And then that's going to give you x. In this case, x is 5.237 days. But we are considering the death of the dinosaurs as 66 million years ago. So we also have to think about that in terms of this. This is 5.237 days ago. Which means if we go to our calendar down here, we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to pretend we're at the end of the year and we're working our way back. This is saying that the dinos died. Actually, the dinos should die on December 26th, the day after Christmas. You can round up because this is 5.237. So just over 5 days ago, which would be December 26th, is when the dinosaurs died. Sorry, dinos. They got to celebrate Christmas, so that's fine. So you're going to do that with 8 different events. Oh, and then I am going to have questions for you to answer as well. I didn't put them on here yet. I'm going to reformat this too. So you're going to look at these events. You're going to put them into days. If you're not sure if you have the right day, shoot me an email. But just remember, this means days ago. And if you get a number that's like 42 and you're like, well, fuck, I don't want to count 42 days back. Or, 126. You can do 365 minus 126 and then come down to my calendar down here and find, oh, well, if I do, what did I say? 365 minus 126. 126 days ago, right? Well, that's going to give me 239 days from the beginning of the year. And that might be easier to find because I have put the numbers here. So it's 239, which is going to be here in April, days 213 to 43. So you can go 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 44, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39. I don't know why I went that way because I'm a dummy. You're going to be like, oh, that was August 29th. Oh, and I said April. Oh my God, you guys. It's August. Ugh, I just need to go sleep. So you can do it one of those 2 ways. But just remember that the initial solving for X is X days ago. So you're going to start at the end of the year, December 31st, and work your way backwards. And then you're going to answer the questions at the bottom that don't happen here yet. Hopefully this is a really interesting assignment. I think it's really fun. I think it's really mind-blowing. And then, so that's your homework. It's not super long. Your lab is this guy. Oh, look, it's oh, good. It's a different block. So you are going to list the layers of stratigraphy in order from oldest to youngest using the relative dating, the laws of relative dating. Answer those questions, blah, blah, blah. As you get here, you're going to use these links to load 3D models of fossils. Again, not as cool as real fossils, but it'll have to do. So you can like play around with these 3D models. Look at that thing. It's so cool. And then, oopsie, where did my lab go? Here it is. You're going to go, you can choose how many numbers? 5. You can choose any of these. I don't care if you choose 3 to 8, and you ignore 1, 2, and 3. So 4 to 8, sorry. You can choose whichever 5 fossils you want. I don't care. Just make sure you tell me what number it is, right? If you're like, oh, this is going to be 3, and then this one's going to be 1, and then this one's going to be 6. I don't care. Live your life. Do whatever you want. If you find a fossil up here, they're like, I want to talk about that. Do that. But you only have to pick 5 of them. And then when you get to that one, you might be like, oh, I don't know what this fossil is when it loads. Oh, okay, well, I know what this is. So you might be like, I wonder what that is. You're going to go back here and I have a sheet here for you to look at. And oh, it was a trilobite. Interesting. And you're going to tell me the phylum. Everything that you need is up here. The phylum is Arthropoda. The sample description characteristics looks like a creepy ass bug. The age range, this is where things get weird. You don't need numbers for the age range. The age range is listed right here. Cambrian to Permian. If you go up to our geologic time scale, Cambrian is from here to Permian here. So it takes up the entire Paleozoic era. Okay, so that's your age range. And then your name of fossil is going to be trilobite, boop, which is down here. So some of these too, keep in mind, phylum Echinodermata have crinoids and they have blastoids. Those are going to be 2 different ones. You have corals. You have, mollusca has multiple examples of shells. So just keep that in mind when you're naming these fossils. And then you're going to look at the extinctions that we talked about and talk about which ones went extinct. That's it. It's a short lab too, and hopefully it's fun. You'll get to look at some fossils. I actually made this a lot shorter than last terms. I got a lot of complaints about how this lab was really long, so I shortened it significantly for you guys. Okay. I don't know how long this is going to be. It's almost 8. Please reach out with any questions or concerns. Have fun with it. I'm so sorry that this video was a bit of a mess. But my neighbor stopped playing music. That was nice of him. Um, but this is a really fun concept. It's a really fun topic. And then next week we'll do cryosphere. Okay, mending. Goodbye, friends.